Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku was adopted by Midnight Part 1. Midnight makes a decision. Midnight was visiting the orphanage after her usual patrol. No reason other than the feeling she has been carrying with her for the past few days. She was late to a recent villain attack on an apartment building. A fire-breathing villain was on a rampage caused by the anger at his wife for divorcing him. In the attack he killed his wife, majorly injured 5 people, and caused minor injury to 10. But the most devastating part was when she discovered that his child was supposed to be there in that apartment when he burned it down. That villain was planning on killing his family out of pettiness. Instead, the child came running up to the scene with tears in his eyes as he watched his home burn to the ground with his mother inside. Flashback. Mom? Mama. A child's voice yelled out through the night as a family of 3 followed after a running green-haired boy. No. The older blonde woman covered her mouth at the sight and the man put his arm around his grief-stricken wife. The blonde boy was staring at the inferno with a scowl before glancing back at the green-haired child with a look of pity. Midnight looked away from the scene. It broke her heart to see this. She had just recently graduated, but she wasn't expecting to be greeted with this sort of tragedy so early in her hero job. She was preparing for it to happen, she just didn't want it to be this soon. Poor child. She looked back at the boy with emerald green eyes, large tears streaking down his face. The fire illuminating an orange hue to his grief-stricken face as he watched the building that he lived in, his home, being destroyed by the flames of his father. I'm sorry. I couldn't save her in time. Midnight thought to herself as she looked at the boy's sad expression. If only I was sooner to the scene, I could have saved her. Midnight thought as she silently said a prayer and apology to the woman lost in the fire. Flashback over. The villain was apprehended, but the damage was already done. The building had to be rebuilt and the residents were homeless for a few months. The residents were granted the ability to stay in one of the apartment buildings that the heroes made in cases of situations like these. She felt so bad for the small boy and she felt even worse when he had to be put into the foster system. Namuri caught wind that one of the mother's friends tried to take him in, but social workers wouldn't allow it since they weren't named legal guardians over the boy. From what she knows, the blonde woman put up quite a fight to keep her friend's child with her. So she took it into her own hands to see how the child was doing after being in the system for less than a week. She went in with her civilian clothes in order to not be recognized by anyone there. She wore a dark blue blazer and pencil skirt with a ruffled white dress shirt underneath. She wore small black heels with a dark purple pantyhose made out of ultra-thin material. She carried a small red clutch in her hand for her necessities. Namuri adjusted her glasses before opening the door to the orphanage. Hello. I am Namuri Kayama, I called ahead to meet with Midoriya Izuku. She said to the lady behind the rickety wooden desk. The kind lady nodded and said, the children are all playing outside in the backyard. Follow me, Miss Kayama. Midnight was guided to the backyard where the children were playing. The backyard had a playground with swings, slides, and a big playhouse. There were many toys and balls that were scattered all over the grass. Midnight looked over to the groups of children playing and didn't see the green hair she saw that night. Until Namuri looked over by the tree and saw a small green-haired boy just sitting against the tree looking at the flowers sprouting from the ground. Flashback. Midnight hated the police station. She didn't hate the police officers or detectives, but she hated the vibe of dreariness that always seemed to be in the offices. Namuri was there because she wanted to see about the child of the mother. The file said his name was Midoriya Izuku. His mother was killed by his father in the huge attack. Midoriya Hisashi is currently in prison for the attack and murder of his wife. Then, Midnight was given news that Izuku and the Bakugo family that was watching over him were currently being interrogated. She headed over right away to check the case out with her friend Aizawa. Aizawa Shota aka Eraserhead took down the kid's father as the other heroes on scene saved as much people as they could. The only death was Midoriya Inko. Midnight and Aizawa went into each interrogation room with each person there to finish off their reports. The husband Bakugo Masaru was a quiet person and answered each question calmly. His wife, Bakugo Mitsuki, answered each question but kept asking where her son and Izuku were. Their son, Bakugo Katsuki, knew next to nothing on the incident, only talking about how Deku was only at their place for a few hours before they heard about the incident. Midnight and Aizawa both noticed how he said Deku instead of Izuku. The most interesting was Izuku. He didn't cry as much as when he did at the time of the incident. He replied to the answers given truthfully. But Midnight felt a maternal instinct crawl up into her through when the interrogator asked Izuku why he was so calm. Mama knew what my dad was going to do. His statement had everyone on the other side of the mirror in silence. What do you mean by that? The interrogator questioned, writing down some notes on a piece of paper. Izuku explained, when she packed me up for the sleepover, she packed extra clothes and toys that were my favorite. My mom gave me a small bag of her stuff and a picture album in my school bag with my books. She also gave me a few envelopes with letters inside. My mom also made sure to write down her katsudon recipe in one of my notebooks. Didn't you find her behavior strange? The interrogator asked. He clicked his pen twice. A little. But she was my mom and I didn't know what it meant. When my mom said goodbye, she made it longer than usual. She said that she loved me, she would miss me, and Izuku started to trail off, his eyes becoming misty. The interrogator prompted, what else did she say, Izuku? That she was sorry. The police discovered that the envelopes he mentioned was her will and a multitude of letters she has written him. Each letter was made for him as gifts for the rest of his birthdays until his 100th. He said that she had been writing them for a long time, almost 2 weeks entirely. Which made them sick to the stomach, since she must have known that as soon as she declared the divorce, that something bad would happen to her. The will she had written gave everything she had left behind to her son and only him, no one could take it away from him. He was allowed to access it all when he turned 15. The will didn't list any guardians. But the heroes noticed how rushed it was, like the mother knew what was going to happen and just wanted the best for him. She finished the last line with an apology to her son and saying how much she loved him. Midnight was the one who noticed the tear stains at the bottom of the page with her signature. Midnight strolled casually over to the boy at the tree and started some conversation. Hey there. She said gently with a grin. Izuku raised his head to look at the woman. Hello. So, do you like heroes? Nomuri asked softly. She didn't really know where to keep a conversation rolling. Yeah. I like All Might and Eraserhead the most. Izuku said as he peered up at the woman and her wavy black hair held back in a ponytail. He couldn't help but remember her from somewhere. Oh yeah. Those two are totally my favorites too. Nomuri said, trying to be cool in her delivery. What the hell was that? She reprimanded herself inside her mind. Yeah. But don't worry, Izuku said as he remembered where exactly he saw those blue eyes from. I like you too, Midnight-san. Oh, that's wonderful. Wait, what? Midnight asked as she realized what the child had just said. Izuku giggles at seeing her expression. I remember you. That's why I knew who you were. Midnight giggled stiffly at being found out even though she was in her civilian disguise. Was she that noticeable? Should she get a different outfit for these kinds of things? Izuku interrupted her by asking about her quirk. So your quirk. Can it work if you put something like your sweat in little smoke bombs, or does it just work with skin? Midnight answered his question, only to receive more questions with his eyes sparkling from excitement. She smiled back before settling down in the grass beside him. They talked for the rest of the hour before one of the caretaking ladies was ready to let the children back inside. Midnight turned to Izuku before making one of the biggest decisions of her life. Do you want to come home with me? Izuku got stunned into silence. I may not be the best mom or exactly how your mother was, but I will do my best to. Midnight started before getting pulled into a tight hug. Yes, Izuku cried out happily. You are thinking of adopting him, aren't you? Aizawa said deadpan as they walked out the police building. The Bakugo family wasn't allowed to adopt Izuku since they weren't legal guardians, and one of the detectives noticed how Katsuki would talk about Izuku. Even if they wanted to, the will didn't list any caretakers or guardians. What? No. I'm just worried about the little guy. Nomuri said as she walked next to him. I bet you will adopt him by the end of the week from just that look in your eyes. Aizawa asked with his usual smile on his face. A kind of creepy grin she got used to seeing during her time at UA. Oh, you are on, Nomuri said with a defiant look in her eyes. Yet here she was 3 days later, signing paperwork to quickly adopt Izuku after fostering him for a few months. She thought, damn it. Looked like Aizawa won the bet. But when she looked at Izuku holding her hand while his luggage was being moved to her car with the help of one of the younger ladies, she felt like she didn't lose anything. Izuku looked up like her, felt her looking at him and smiled up at her happily. She felt like won the best prize ever. Interview time. Midnight thought a nice outing with Izuku to her office would be a good idea. He loved heroes and she worked as one. Perfect idea, right? She could introduce him to new ones on the scene and have some of his favorites autograph his belongings. She was fairly new, but she knew at least one of his favorites is one of her friends. She might have lost a bet, but Eraserhead will soon find out he can't handle the cuteness that the freckled boy radiates. So she brought Izuku to her office to do exactly that last Sunday. She introduced him to her best friend, Hisashi Yamada, who he knew best as Present Mick. Izuku gushed over how not only was he bilingual, but he also did a radio show. Hisashi was more than happy to tell him all about Put Your Hands Up Radio. Izuku was so excited when she introduced him to Iida Tensei, also known as Ingenium. Izuku went on a rampage with questions towards him, asking about if he ever tried using his arm engines as a kind of jetpack. Tensei looked at him like he just blew his mind. He wisely answered, no, but that is a good idea. And lastly, one of his favorite pro heroes, Eraserhead, whose name is Aizawa Shouta. Aizawa felt the wrath of cuteness as he listened to Izuku babble about how cool he was. Izuku asked question after question of him, fighting quirkless to his bright yellow goggles. When he was busy fanboying over the three, Nomuri handed a sum of money in an envelope to a slightly smirking Eraserhead. Everything was great. She introduced him to heroes like Snipe and Ectoplasm when they were switching from patrol to office time to finish up some reports. He, of course, freaked out even more seeing the heroes. She smiled at Izuku since she was so glad that he was having the time of his life. But the happy moment came crashing down on Tuesday morning. She gets awoken from a text message alert. She slowly opened her eyes and stretched her limbs out, trying to shake the sleep out of her. She rubbed her eyes before reaching on her nightstand for her phone lazily. Namuri plucked her phone from the charger and saw who decided to text her in the middle of the morning. Hisashi. Her eyes widened when she saw the message. They know about Izuku. Call me ASAP. She hurriedly straightened up as much as she could on her comfortable bed with as little sound as possible. She didn't want to wake up Izuku. Namuri clicked on the call button on Hisashi's contact before waiting for him to pick up. On the second ring, he answered, Namuri, did you get my text? Yes, what is this about? How did they find out about him? Midnight asked as she talked as softly as she could without waking the small boy in the next room. I don't know. I think one of the reporters must have wanted to report on Snipe and followed him only to discover you with Izuku. Namuri cursed herself at not choosing to wait until the heroes got inside the building before introducing them to Izuku. They apparently got short videos and photos of how you acted with Izuku. I think one of the videos actually caught you introducing him as your son. But they don't know his name, which is good so far. Namuri groaned as Hisashi continued on, now the media is going wild with this story. Everyone is saying things about you bad stuff. Hisashi sounded really pissed off when he finished the sentence. They don't even know how good of a mother you are to him, but they are judging you and criticizing you for being a bad influence. They don't even know how good of person you are. I want to slap them all in the face with common sense. Hisashi ranted. Namuri laughed at her friend's words before sobering up at the issue at hand. I might have to hold a press conference or interview regarding the situation. I didn't want people to find out this early. I wanted to at least wait until he was ready. Hisashi agreed, yeah. I vote that you do the interview. Press conferences don't know here to draw the line when it comes to privacy. Well, thanks for the heads up, Mick. Midnight said as she rose from her comfy position on the bed. No problem, Midnight. Hey, if Izuku needs a babysitter anytime soon, you are going to call me and is all right? Hisashi asked. Namuri chuckled at her best friend, yes, you and your little boyfriend can come and watch him the next time I take a longer patrol. Bye-bye. Namuri ended the call after she heard an enthusiastic yelling of yeah. She sighed as she sat down at the edge of the bed, she rested her head in her hands. Why did the press and media have to ruin my new life right now? This mom? Izuku quietly asked from behind the crack in her bedroom door. She wasn't rushing him to replace her as his mother, so she didn't have a problem letting him call her whatever he wanted. As long as he didn't refer to her as Midnight since that was her hero name and she didn't want her identity to be let out by accident. Hey buddy. Did you have a nice sleep? She asked Izuku as he walked up to her in his old all-might honesty. She smiled gently as she watched the little boy come up to the bed before trying to climb onto the top. He started to struggle with his little legs trying to propel himself forward onto the comforter. Okay. Let me help you up. Namuri placed her hands under his arms to lift him up. Hop, there we go, Namuri said as she guided Izuku to sit down on her bed next to her. They looked pretty domestic with him in his honesty and her in her long sweater pajamas. Are you okay? I heard noises. Izuku asked gently to her. She smiled at him. No. Everything's fine. I just have to organize a very important interview today. Everything will be okay. She said lightly swinging her feet from her nerves. Okay. Alright. I was just worried. Izuku said as he swung his legs back and forth over the edge mimicking her. There is nothing to worry about. Namuri said reassuringly. Can I come? Izuku's voice asked quietly. Wait, what? She thought. What? She asked out loud, turning back to the adorable toddler with blonde twigs of fabric sticking out of his hoodie. When she really looked at his adorable green eyes, she couldn't really say no. Yes, you can come, she answered back to him before thinking to herself. Oh goodness. This will be interesting. Back at it again with Haruto and Himari. Welcome to the show everybody, two hosts said at the exact same time before the cheer of the small live audience. The man named Haruto stood up in a button-down dark purple shirt with black slacks on, complementing his black dress shoes. The lady named Himari had on a simple amethyst-colored fit and flare dress that had a black belt around her waist. She wore little black flats with a bow that matched the one in her hair. Welcome now, we have a very special guest with us today, Himari said, sounding excited for the guest waiting behind the stage. Yes. A pro hero that has just recently been involved in a rumor that she is going to put to rest right now, Haruto exclaimed with a smile on his face. The crowd grew restless since they could already guess who exactly was it. Please welcome our guest, Midnight, the two hosts said at the same time revealing Midnight in her hero costume. The crowd went wild at the sight of the hero, most of the men for obvious reasons. Midnight waved and smiled at her fans and supporters before taking a seat on the couch on the other side of the hosts. Izuku sat down in the green room with Hisashi in civilian form. He watched his caretaker through the television backstage as she started to answer the questions that the hosts gave her. He really liked watching heroes give interview like this. It really brings a certain feeling when you get to know a pro hero that you don't really know that much about. Hisashi and Izuku watched as Namuri answered all the regular questions that the hosts gave to her. "How are you? How's it going with the job? It must be difficult." Haruto asked. "I'm doing good. My job is no easy picnic, but I wouldn't say that it is impossible to do. You just have to work hard for it." Midnight answered as best as she could. Amari excitedly asked, "I have been dying to finally meet you. It is such an honor for you to come on our show. We are such huge fans." The hosts both nodded while the crowd clapped and cheered. Midnight replied with a smile, "Well, it's an honor to be here with such lovely hosts. Especially since I called at such a horrendous time. I must have messed up your schedule. I'm terribly sorry." No, it's totally fine, we weren't planning on doing any guests today, so you offering to do an interview with us is no problem, Haruto said, trying to reassure the female pro hero. He felt bad for what they were both going to ask her about since they were genuinely big fans of hers. "So," Himari started, "there is a rumor going about that you have become a mom. Do you want to comment on that?" She asked slowly, trying to see if she was making Midnight mad, cause that is the last thing she wanted. Izuku furrowed his brow at the question. "What?" Hisashi gave a big sigh worriedly. "Well, short answer yes. I adopted him about a few weeks ago." Many gasps from the audience. A lot of them were shocked, but there were some that were disgusted. The host seemed shocked that the rumor was true, but happy with it. Who does she think she is raising a child? Isn't she too busy with her little hero job? Who would be taking care of the boy while she isn't there? This is ridiculous. How is she mother material? Last time I checked, mothers don't go around acting like that or dressing like the way she does. How in the hell is she going to raise a child? That child will be raised horribly. Should I call protective services now? Her hero costume says enough about how she will raise her child." Some women were whispering amongst themselves in the crowd, but they were loud enough for Midnight, the hosts, and the camera to hear them. Midnight ducked her head slightly, gritting her teeth at the insults thrown. The hosts looked ready to throw some people out from the way they were acting. Izuku rushed out of the green room in search for the stage where his new mother was. Hisashi followed behind him, but didn't outright stop him, since he kind of knew what the child planned to do. "They can't say that about her, she is my mom. She's my mom, she cares about me, how dare they," Izuku thought to himself as he rushed past the stage hands and slow security guards. His little feet charged full speed all the way to the stage. The crowd gasped once again in the sight of the adorable toddler. The hosts were surprised as well, but none was more surprised than Namuri. "Don't say that about my mom, she is the best mother anyone could ask for," Izuku shouted as he stood in front of his mom in a protective stance. "I love her, don't say mean stuff anymore." Midnight rose from her seat with tears threatening to stream down her face as she gathered the small child into a hug. Izuku hugged back tight before pulling away to face her. "Nobody can say mean stuff about you while I'm here." Midnight laughed while Izuku wiped a small tear from her cheek. "Don't cry, I'm here now," Izuku said with a smile on his face. The hosts were about to die from the heart attack of cuteness. The crowd was expressing the cuteness they felt with a loud "oh." Hisashi watched from the backstage off to the side of the stage with a smile on his face. The interview continued with Izuku sitting right next to his mom swinging his feet. The hosts were asking questions, and sometimes they would ask questions to little Izuku too. The crowd quieted down for the rest of the interview. The ones who made the comments changed their mind after seeing Midnight and Izuku interact. There was no doubt that Midnight loved the child as much as the child loved her. Babysitting adventure. Midnight took time off her hero job to spend time with Izuku. Since she has adopted him, she has only went out on short patrols or only been called as a last measure to make the villain or criminal pass out. It was about time for her to return so she could take care of Izuku with the proper pay she makes. And tomorrow was the first day back to work. She scheduled a short patrol during morning and late at night. Since Izuku has no daycare tomorrow, she and Izuku were watching The Princess and the Frog tonight as a last bonding moment before she has to work. She scheduled for times that allowed her to still spend time with Izuku during the day, but technically, it was a last hurrah because she was officially returning to her hero work. They were at the part where Tiana turns into a frog when Izuku turned to Namuri and said, "I'm like a frog." Namuri furrowed her brow in confusion. "Why are you the frog, Izuku?" Izuku giggled at the question, "Because my hair and eyes are green." Namuri widened her eyes exaggeratedly. "Oh, that must mean if I kiss you, you turn back into my little prince." Izuku laughed as Namuri began to chase him around the living room. Namuri finally caught him and lifted him up to place many small kisses on his forehead. "There, now you are my little prince." Izuku smiled and laughed with Namuri before they both went back to the movie. Namuri wouldn't trade Izuku for anything in the world. What do you mean I have the whole day? Namuri asked into the phone. What? No, I scheduled for early day and late night patrol. What? Apparently she made a mistake on her schedule that made her work from morning to night, which meant she had the whole day to work. But I have someone to take care of now who is going to watch over Izuku. She thought to herself after she finished the phone call to the boss in charge of all the patrol schedules. But she remembered what one of her best friends offered her, which led her to welcoming the two babysitters of the day at her doorstep 20 minutes later. Aizawa had his black hair pulled back into a ponytail, and his Ashi had his blonde hair down around his shoulders. They were both dressed casually in civilian clothes behind her apartment door. Hey guys, thanks for helping me on such short notice. Namuri thanked her friends as they walked in to see where the little child was. Their answer was that he was on the couch swinging his feet in an all-might honesty. No problem, his Ashi said to her loudly as Aizawa strolled over to the kid and sat down gently next to him. They both got introduced to the kid before the whole media thing went down, and they were glad they got to see him again. Thank you guys so much, I'll be back late. She said to the two before turning her attention to the calm toddler waiting on the couch. I'll be back later tonight. I won't be gone forever. Make sure you behave for these two, they are my closest trusted friends. I love you, Izuku. Namuri said to Izuku. Izuku peered up into her eyes. I love you, mommy. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, Namuri said, placing her mask on to finish her hero costume that she has been dressed in for the last 10 minutes. She ordered a change of outfit from her first, so she could quiet some rumors that people have been spreading. And now with the revamped ultra-thin material, she could control her quirk better than before. Her son helped her with that. I'll see you fellas tonight, be good, she called out when exiting her door, waving to her friends and son. They all waved back at her fading figure when she left. Hey buddy, his Ashi greeted Izuku as he sat next to his left, since Aizawa was already sitting at Izuku's right. Hello, Izuku. Aizawa said to the small child to his left, resting his chin in his hand. Hello. Izuku greeted shyly. Do you want to do anything today, bud? His Ashi asked Izuku as the child swung his feet back and forth. I don't know, Izuku said quietly, thinking about his mom. I vote we stay at home, Aizawa piped up from Izuku's other side. No, shouted, this is the time to give the little listener a day at the aquarium or the zoo, his Ashi argued to Aizawa as Izuku took interest into what he said. Zoo? Izuku asked softly. His Ashi smiled as Aizawa groaned at the happily curious face Izuku made. Why did you have to do this to me, Mick? Aizawa asked with his black ponytail and a leopard print hat that Hisashi got from the gift shop after they enjoyed their lunch. Hisashi was wearing a cockatoo hat with a fellow feather sticking out from the back. Come on, look at how much fun Izuku is having, his Ashi replied to the miserable-looking boyfriend he had. Izuku was definitely having fun with a frog hat covering the top of his curls. His Ashi also gifted him with a rainbow panda plush backpack that his Ashi was carrying in a bag. Izuku didn't ask for anything, but when his Ashi saw those eyes drift towards the panda, he knew what to do. Izuku was currently in front of them heading toward the elephant exhibit. Aizawa was tired from all the walking despite his Ashi trying to cheer him up. So far, they had seen the birds, amphibians, reptiles, and all the other animals. They just needed to see the elephant before they head back home. Izuku was having a really great time with his uncles. He saw so many awesome animals he ran ahead of his uncles to get to the big exhibit of the large grey elephants. Aizawa and his Ashi came up from behind him as he stood in awe at the mother and child elephant eating together. They smiled softly, his Ashi more than Aizawa, at the sight of the small child looking so excited at the elephants. As Ashi read aloud what the description said, Luis, the big elephant, is taking care of Susie, an orphaned elephant, after her birth mother was lost after an incident. Aizawa frowned at the story on the plaque as Izuku's face grew more thoughtful. They are like me and mommy, Izuku said happily at the elephants. We both have someone to take care of us and love us, even though we lost someone. As Ashi sniffled and Aizawa ruffled Izuku's hair at his statement. It hasn't been that long since their friend had adopted him, but he already saw her as someone special to him. Let's get going, Squirt. Say goodbye to Luis and Susie. Aizawa said to Izuku. Okay. Bye-bye, Izuku called out, receiving a trumpet from Susie. He laughed at the sound and waved to the small elephant before following behind his uncles. Safe to say, his Ashi bought a big and small plush elephant pair for Izuku on their way out, much to Izuku's surprised delight. Midnight was so tired from her patrol. She carried her hero costume in a gym bag as she went towards her door in her casual civilian clothes, which was a simple dark blue dress and black flats. Somehow, it seemed that all the criminals knew she was working again and just showed up out of nowhere at so many different places just to make her day terrible. She sighed and unlocked her apartment door. She smiled softly as she remembers the little prince she was doing this all for. She knew that he was the token to bring her smile back. She swung open the door to find his Ashi and Izuku napping on the couch, with Aizawa placing a blanket over the two. You don't mind if we sleep over, right? Aizawa asked as he gestured to his knocked-out boyfriend on the couch with Izuku lying on his chest. The TV was playing the Jungle Book credits, illuminating their sleeping form. No problem at all. I'm sure I have 2 futons in my closet. Namuri said quietly as she walked over to the closet. So what happened? Did you 3 have fun? They did, I can't say so for my headache from making sure these 2 didn't get into trouble though. Aizawa replied as he unrolled a futon that his friend handed to him. So, we spent a good day at the zoo. Aizawa mumbled slightly to her. Great. I was so worried, but it seems Izuku had fun today. So I'm happy. She said it, the toddler happily snoozing away on the chest of one of her best guy friends. And hey, now I know, Aizawa said as he snuggled up in the futon. Know what? Namuri asked tiredly as she laid down in a separate futon. The reason you fell for him and wanted to take care of him. Aizawa mumbled as he started to doze off. He thought as he drifted off, the little kid has potential to be something great in the future. Izashi is probably going to bug me and getting a child of our own soon, by the way he is spoiling Izuku, he thought when he went to sleep. The wrong diagnosis leads to unfortunate accidents. Midnight sat in silence with Izuku crying his eyes out into her shoulder at home. They just got back from him being diagnosed as quirkless. Apparently the X-ray was a bit blurry, but the doctor concluded from the blurry screen that he will be quirkless. Izuku has been sad ever since, so she called up some friends to help him cheer up. The doorbell rings and Namuri goes to answer it, gently coaxing Izuku to lay back down. She opens the door to Hisashi and Aizawa in their normal clothes. Is the little listener okay? Hisashi questioned in a worried quiver to his voice. Those doctors don't really know how to do their jobs correctly. I never liked them. Where is he? Aizawa asked politely but with a tense tone. He has been crying ever since the appointment. I think he is really disappointed that he was told he couldn't be a hero by that doctor. He hasn't talked since we left even when we got home. He is in his room right now. Hopefully he will cheer up with you guys here. Namuri responded, guiding them to Izuku's room. Izuku's room was right across from her own bedroom. His ceiling adorned with glow-in-the-dark stars. He had basic light wood furniture like a writing desk, a clothing dresser, and bookshelves that filled the wall next to his bed. His bed was a simple light red comforter covering a dark blue sheet. There Izuku was crying his eyes out into a teddy bear that she gifted him a few weeks after she adopted him. The giant elephant plush from the zoo visit laid above his head of curls. Hey, buddy. We heard about what happened. You can talk to us if you need to. Hisashi said, resting his hand on Izuku's back. He rubbed it as Izuku sniffled back his tears. Listen, kid, I'm not good with words. But I just want you to know what that doctor said was complete crap. Aizawa piped up next to Izuku's side. He heard a giggle from the child amongst the tearful gasps. It's true. You know how my quirk works, right? Aizawa asked, gaining a slow nod from the sad boy. Aizawa continued, my quirk isn't flashy and it doesn't really help with combat. That means I fight my battles mostly quirkless. So does Hisashi. His quirk is meant for long distance, but when he encounters a villain short distance, he will resort to martial arts. Do you see where I'm getting at? Izuku looked a bit confused with his tear-filled eyes turned to look at him from where he laid. It means that you can be a hero. No matter if you have a quirk or not, you can become a hero. You might need a little training, and the 3 of us are all ready to help you achieve it. Aizawa explained. Izuku smiled despite his red face and said. Thank you, Uncle Aizawa. Aizawa's cheeks reddened before Namuri and Hisashi dive-bomb Izuku into a hug, forcing him to fall into it. Izuku's giggles were accompanied by attempts to make him smile, no matter what they talked about. But at the end of the day, Izuku was back to his usual self again. And he knew that he would become a hero. So he could save people just like his mama. Bakugo was kind of happy for Deku. He was worried that he wouldn't get to see him again when he went to the foster home, but he got adopted by a pro-hero that helped apprehend the villain. He felt bad that not only did he lose his awesome auntie, but also Izuku lost his mom in that attack. So seeing him again made him want to be a bit nicer. If he wanted to be a hero, he would have to stop acting like a villain. A type of villain that killed his mother, he never wanted to become like that. So when Izuku came back to the daycare, Bakugo made sure that Izuku was okay and stuff. It had only been less than a year since the accident. And Bakugo was excited to see what quirk Izuku had. That way they could be heroes together. I'm quirkless, Izuku replied to him when he came in that day. What? No, that crap doesn't make sense. Bakugo responded in disbelief. Does that mean you don't want to be heroes with me, Deku? Of course I do, Izuku said, furrowing his brow at his friend. Bakugo blinked then nodded. Okay, then we become heroes, simple as that. Do you really mean it? Izuku asked with a grateful smile. Tatsuki shrugged. Yeah. Sure. Why? You playing heroes with me or not? Yes, Kaken. Izuku agreed with a grin which Kaken returned with a smirk. The two began to play heroes before Bakugo's fake friend sauntered up to them. "Hey Bakugo, why are you hanging out with the loser?" The first one said, stopping right in front of Bakugo with a mocking pout. "Yeah, come play with us," the second mentioned right from behind the first. "Screw you guys, can't you see we're playing here? Get your own spot," Katsuki yelled out in anger and annoyance to the extras. A third appeared from behind Bakugo and pushed Izuku to the ground. Katsuki turned back to see his friend on the ground. He saw red and called on his explosive quirk. "Don't mess with me, extra." Izuku weakly opened his eyes from the ground to see a blurry version of Kaken going to attack the boy who pushed him. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Izuku reached out his hand toward Kaken and whispered, "Wait. Stop, Kaken." The explosion that was aimed toward the bully's face was bent toward the sky at the last second. The flame shot out and set a small ember sailing to a blade of grass in front of Izuku's face. Several things happened at once. The friends ran away from the heated Bakugo. Katsuki looked at his hands and back toward where the explosion was aimed. He realized where he aimed wasn't where it shot and was wondering what the hell just happened. Meanwhile, Izuku freaked out at the sight of the burning blade of grass. The heat of it felt like the heat that night that he dreaded. The sight of it reminded him of when his father, the villain who killed his mother, his home, fire ablaze, fire-breathing quirk, fire, mama, fire caused it to happen. Fire was the reason his mom perished. Fire is bad, get away, bad, don't hurt me, stay away. Izuku's mind faded to blackness as his quirk began to unleash around him. Bakugo looked from his hands back up to see the bench a few feet away from him floating in the air. Then the rocks. Then the giant trees. After that, a giant boulder that he used to climb on as a kid. The screams of people finally registered in his mind when he saw multiple people running out of the park. A villain must be nearby, he thought, turning to Izuku to get him out of there. Only to see his friend floating in mid-air with his hair turned white and his eyes glowing a radioactive green. "Oh, crap," Katsuki said at the state his friend was in. "We have a major situation, call. All pro heroes near site report in." Midnight picked up the phone as soon as the message came through. Present Mick and Eraserhead did the same. They all nodded to each other and started heading in the direction of the incident. Eraserhead asked into the intercom, silently cursing whatever it was that caused an interruption between a coffee break. "What is the situation? The boy seems to be about 4 or 5, just activated their quirk. What is the big problem?" Hisashi asked, staring down at his intercom before getting nudged by Namiri. But she exclaimed while pointing at the area of the park, or what used to be. The trees were all uprooted from their spots, rocks and boulders were floating and bumping into each other. Benches were sailing over the heads of civilians, while parked cars hovered sideways around the mess. "What is causing this?" Eraserhead asked, getting agitated by the amount of work he had to do. "This kid has got one serious quirk to deal with." "Not what? Who?" Hisashi asked, getting a good look at which child was at the center of it all. Izawa furrowed his brow at him before focusing more clearly on what troublemaker was causing this. His face paled at the realization. "No." Namiri stared right at the floating boy and yelled out in anguish the name she knew him by. The name she got so used to saying. The title of a person she grew to care deeply about. A boy she loved with all her heart. Her son suspended amongst the wreckage that looked to be in utter pain at the amount of weight he is putting his newly found quirk under. Izuku's quirk. Midnight looked out in horror as she saw her son floating with suspended objects orbiting him. The heroes on the ground were focusing on moving the people out of the way and rescuing people who were stuck on a certain floating tree or in a car. Everyone seemed to be fine, no people were actually being floated unless they were connected to an object. Even the animals were left alone as long as they weren't in the trees or they escaped early. But one child was unaccounted for. Mitsuki shouted, being held back, her husband with a pro hero blocking her way. Masaru tried to calm her while worrying about his son. Midnight looked up to see the Bakugo child holding onto a tree that was closest to Izuku. From the looks of it, he is trying to keep calm and calling out to his friend in the middle of the mess. The elementary school teacher and their group of kids stood by and watched as Izuku wreaked havoc on the park that they visited today as a group. Namiri looked back at her friends. "I'm going to go save my son." Bakugo didn't know how to deal with this. One of his best friends is going out of control with their quirk and they can't stop it. Ever since the trees started to float around them, he has been trying to get Izuku to respond to him. But Izuku couldn't hear him. He couldn't reach him. How was he supposed to save him? He even took hold of the tree to try to help him while everyone else ran away from him. How could he be a hero in the future if he couldn't save him now? Someone, anybody? Where are the pro heroes? Someone help him please. Izuku, wake up please, Katsuki shouted in the direction his friend was floating. Izuku didn't move, his now white curls were flowing with the wind. His radioactive bright green eyes show no movement, they were only looked ahead in a trance. All of the sudden Bakugo was wrapped in a long grey scarf and lifted from his spot on the tree. He fought against the fabric only to land in the hold of Present Mick. "Don't worry. We will get your friend safe soon. My buddies will take care of it." Let me get you out of harm's way first. President Mick said to the fighting toddler. At his words, Bakugo calmed down only to focus his glare on the two heroes going toward Izuku. They better save him or else, he thought with worry as the hero brought him to his parents. Izawa didn't know what to think. One day he is cheering up a kid from being diagnosed quirkless, and then the next day he is trying to save him from his own quirk. The whole park area where he was playing at what is now up in the air with him in the middle of it. It looked like Izuku inherited a mutated and very powerful version of his late mother's telekinesis quirk. All he knew, it was his job to save him. It was his job to save his nephew, and he didn't want to let him down. First, he saved the Bakugo child and swiftly handed him off to President Mick before following the Nemuri as she jumped from floating tree to floating rock. With each jump, they got closer to the main center where Izuku was suspended. He was going to erase his quirk when he got close enough to look into Izuku's eyes. Then, Nemuri would use her quirk and knock him out. After he goes unconscious, they will clean up the park while Nemuri goes home with her boy and makes sure he is okay. The plan was easy, so they got it in motion quickly. Eraser, Nemuri shouted to him as his cue. Izawa nodded as he got up closer to Izuku. Izuku's eyes reacted to the movement. With his telekinesis powers, he floated a billboard straight down where he was and effectively blocked his vision. Izawa didn't react fast enough and was pulled into a tree prison that Izuku made with his quirk. He wasn't in control of his body or quirk anymore. Damn it, he thought when he tried to escape from his wooden prison, only for it to become smaller. It's up to you, Midnight, he shouted from the confines of his imprisonment. Izuku didn't even react to a familiar face. His body just recognized any kind of movement made in a certain way was hostile, and his quirk reacted to protect him. Nemuri thought on her feet when she saw her friend get trapped. His quirk may not recognize who exactly is approaching him, so she needed to try to think quickly. She started by making her way along the outside of the billboard and slowly reaching for her neckline. Midnight pulled an inch of cloth away from her neck, trying to focus on bringing the sleepy gas to him on the other side. Please work, she thought to herself as the billboard started to fidget in place. She peeked around the board to see that Izuku was struggling to stay awake with his hand trying to block his nose from inhaling the gas. It made him stutter for a moment, which is what she needed. She gritted her teeth before trying her last plan. Izuku, honey. Wake up, please. Izuku's bright green eyes tried to refocus on where the voice was coming from, but the fog was affecting his vision. The gas was making him a bit woozy, affecting his hearing. Who was that calling for him? Stop. Please. I don't want anything to happen to you, Midnight said, wiping a tear from her masked face. I have only known you for a short time, but you are my little prince. I can't deal with this. Wake up, please, I love you. Please, wake up. Izuku's eyes started to flicker. The objects floating farthest away started to gently go back to the ground. Nemuri noticed and started approaching slowly. Trees began to right themselves back into the ground, rocks started to situate themselves back into their places. Kitsuki watched with his parents behind President Mick at the slowly descending items that were being returned to their proper places. Izuku's white hair started vanishing as his green curls flowed back in from the roots. Nemuri rushes just in time to grab Izuku from falling out of the sky. Izawa dodged away from his wooden trunk prison to go to where his friend and nephew was. Izuku's eyes returned to their normal shade right as he fell into a deep sleep caused by exhaustion. Nemuri rested his head on her lap right as Izawa arrived with President Mick and the Bakugo family on his tail. Is he okay? President Mick asked as Bakugo looked to see his friend resting calmly on the lap of Midnight. He knew that she was his new mom since he and his family watched the interview when it happened. Thankfully, she was there. Does he need to go to the hospital? Masaru asked with his wife holding their son in her arms. He'll be okay. He just needs to rest. Izawa said looking at Izuku's peaceful face. Nemuri brushed a lock of hair out of her little prince's face. His soft breathing fell into rhythm as she gently brushed her fingers through his hair. Thank God he's okay. She thought to herself as the pro heroes began to fix up the park around them. But that didn't matter to her. She had her son back. Prepping for new school. Midnight was furious. She found out what caused the incident from the words of Bakugo. And she was beyond mad that the school was allowing her son to be bullied because he was quirkless. Oh, she was going to have some words with the principal, and they better hope to whatever god they pray to that their begging skills are top-notch. Or else. That is exactly why she was sitting with Izuku to her left and Bakugo with his father and mother to her right. After the whole incident, the Bakugo family exchanged contact with her to set up more hangout times for the children. Nemuri was thankful that young Kitsuki had changed his attitude since she last saw him. She noticed how Kitsuki was protective of Izuku and how he was desperately trying to reach him while the whole crisis was going on. Nemuri sat with the Bakugo family while Izuku was getting checked on by recovery girl. Kitsuki was considerably upset at not being able to save his friend, but Nemuri banished his thoughts. You did well trying to save Izuku. I'm looking forward to seeing you become a hero yourself with Izuku. Make sure to keep your attitude of protection while moving on from now until the future. The intent to save is more important than the intent to win. She explained to Bakugo, who was sitting next to her, angrily wiping at his tears. When Izuku was cleared from recovery girl to just some well-needed rest, everyone sighed in relief. Bakugo automatically went to his side and clung onto him with tears in both their faces. Namuri smiled at the side before being tapped by Mitsuki. She turned to receive a note card with everyone's contact. When she asked why, Mitsuki responded with a gentle smile of her own, matching her husband. Inko was a good friend of mine. I blame myself for not noticing what was going on. I was devastated when I couldn't protect him myself by adopting him into my home. And I would appreciate it if we were able to see Izuku now and then. Mitsuki explained carefully with her husband's hand on her shoulder reassuringly. Namuri nodded and smiled as the three parents watched as the two children hugged onto each other. I won't use my explosions to hurt anymore. I will only use them to save, Bakugo thought to himself while clinging onto the shoulders of his best friend. Namuri received news from recovery girl that Izuku will need some time to recover his strength to use his quirk again if he wished. And when Izuku is better, they will need to get his quirk registered. Nezu was informed of the doctor that made the wrong diagnosis and saw to it his medical license was suspended until they went back over their necessary quirk education again. But after their license was revoked, they disappeared from the public eye. Nobody has seen him. Midoriya, Izuku and Midnight-san, please come in. Midnight nodded to the Bakugas before guiding Izuku to the office. She sat down as soon as she entered with Izuku sitting in the other chair to her right. So what seems to be the problem? The principal asked from his desk. I have received word from my son and his friend that bullies were the cause of his distressing quirk awakening, Namuri answered with a mean glare directed at him. I see. The principal answered meekly as a sweat drop ran down from his forehead to his neck. So, would you mind explaining how on earth that any bullies were allowed to initiate that kind of behavior? We never have seen any kind of bullying toward young, the principal tried to excuse himself. Oh really? Because Bakugo has been telling me very different stories. Of how the teachers would turn a blind eye and allow it to happen because they picked favorites, Midnight declared very loudly. The principal tried to counter, well, or the fact that no matter if the children used their quirk on my son, they wouldn't report the kids or do anything to send Izuku to the nurse's office. Or the fact that they contributed in the bullying by saying anything that would make the other kids hate him for some reason. Midnight ranted as she glared daggers at the worried principal. But I didn't come here to tell you what you are doing right or wrong. No. Midnight smiled sweetly, plopping down a stack of papers on his desk. You can use any excuse your little mind comes up with in court. Nezu helped me make this lawsuit actually, so be prepared for anything. The principal freaked out at the things piling against him and his school. Work discrimination being the main one listed on top of all the other offenses. He looked up with freaked out eyes to see the rated 18 pro hero with Izuku in her arms walking out the door. Izuku giggled in her arms with a bright smile on his face as the door closed shut behind them. The court saw the elementary school and the principal guilty. Everyone on faculty was replaced with new teachers that didn't encourage any sort of misbehavior. The principal was a woman that Nezu appointed from Tokyo that was an excellent leader and worked very well with kids. Bakugo was happy to know that Izuku and anyone like him wouldn't be hurt in the new school, but he was sad. Izuku was getting moved to a more private school. Same Elementary School. Namuri, Izuku's mom, wanted to transfer him to a more private school. Not only because of his past treatment, but also because the public knew who Izuku was. So to make up for the lost time between the two, the parents went to the park to let their kids spend time with each other. So the two friends were sitting by their favorite stream while their parents enjoyed a calm picnic. Mitsuki was informing Midnight about all the memories she had of Izuku and Bakugo's play dates from the past. We are still going to hang out, right? Kitsuki asked Izuku as they swung their feet. I'm not going to be far, Kaken, and we can always hang out during the weekends. Izuku responded with a gentle smile on his face. Yeah, and we will become heroes together, the best hero duo ever, Bakugo said with an excited grin. Izuku replied, yay. The two giggled as the parents watched them play another game. In only a few days until Izuku will be entering into a new school. And the two made the most of it during the weekend by playing an adventure game together. It was a day before Izuku was supposed to go to his new school. Namuri was headed toward the kitchen for a snack of chocolate chip cookies that were hidden in the jar above the fridge. But to her surprise, the jar was no longer on the fridge, but instead on the counter, turned over on its side. She noticed how there was a few cookie crumbs spilling onto the floor. But then she noticed a little thin trail of crumbs leading behind the counter. She smiled when she heard crunching sounds before looking behind to find Izuku on the floor munching. Hey, champ. Namuri greeted with a soft smile aimed at his curly head. Izuku froze and swallowed whatever was in his mouth. Yes. What are you doing? Namuri asked with a hand on her hip. Just sitting on the floor thinking about life, Izuku responded slowly. Oh. That's great, honey. Do you know what happens to the cookie jar? Knew what happened to it. Izuku replied, trying to act innocent with crumbs on his chin. Izuku, did you use your quirk to get a cookie? No. I used it to get 2 cookies. Izuku answered as he held up 2 fingers. Namuri laughed before she swooped up Izuku into her arms. Oh really? Do you know what happens now? What? Tickle monster, she answered with a laugh. Izuku laughed as Namuri attacked his little stomach with tickles. He used his quirk to escape from her tickling grasp and float slowly to the safety of the couch cushions. Namuri followed him to the couch before dragging him back down to her level. She blew a raspberry to his belly, which resulted in him falling into giggles. New school, new friends, same Izuku. Tensei said this was a good place for his little brother to go to, so Izuku must be safer at a place like this, Midnight thought as she guided Izuku into the private school. Izuku agreed to have play dates with Bakugo on the weekends since they couldn't go to the same school anymore. They were sad to part but eagerly awaiting when they would see another again. Right now, Izuku was clinging onto her hand while she walked him inside the unfamiliar territory. I'm nervous. Izuku said honestly to his mother. I understand you might feel a bit nervous. But don't be scared, you might make some fantastic friends here that will last you your lifetime. Like Bakugo will be to you, you might find another best friend. Namuri reassured her son. Izuku calmed down a bit but still held onto a bad feeling of entering a new school with people he didn't know. He asked, what do I do to make friends? Just be yourself. Introduce yourself, be nice and just don't let anyone make you feel sad. But if anyone tries to bully you like the others did, you just tell me and I'll make sure it won't happen ever again. Namuri answered effectively. Izuku giggled slightly and smiled, okay. Namuri returned the smile as they reached his new classroom. She knelt down and started to say her goodbye. I'll see you soon, Izuku. I'll be here to pick you up after work. And then you get to tell me about your first day, okay? Izuku hugged her with all his might and she returned the hug tighter. I'll miss you, but I'll be back sooner than later. Have fun. Alright, mom. I love you. Love you too, honey. Bye. Namuri replied, turning around to walk back. Bye-bye. Izuku responded right as the homeroom teacher led him in his new homeroom. Oh, hello. You must be Izuku. Nice to meet you, I'm Asani, your new homeroom teacher. Would you like to come in and introduce yourself? His teacher asked, receiving a nod from him. Great, now come on inside. Izuku walked inside to find 20 pairs of eyes staring at him. Hello. My name is Kayama Izuku. Nice to meet you. Hello, the class greeted in unison. The teacher nodded and escorted Izuku to his new seat right next to a girl with a dark ponytail and a boy with glasses. Aoi Rozu and Iida, Kayama will be your new seat buddies starting today. Izuku looked at the teacher's back as she walked away, leaving him alone with his new buddies. Hi, he greeted shyly. Hello Kayama. Welcome to our table, Yaoi Rozu greeted with a gentle smile at him. Greeting, Kayama-kun, Iida responded to him. You can call me Izuku if you want. Izuku offered as he sat down next to his new buddies. Okay, then you can call me Momo if you want. Yaoi Rozu suggested back to him while he got comfortable in his seat. Then, you can call me as Tenya if you wanted. Iida responded as well with a slight blush on his cheeks. Izuku smiled. Maybe this won't be so bad after all, he thought to himself. Soon, it was lunchtime and Izuku was sitting with his 2 new friends. Unbeknownst to them, one kid recognized the new child as being the one under Midnight's care. The villain's kid that caused major damage in the park with his telekinesis quirk. That kid could only spell trouble, so they approached in front of everyone to call him out on it. So, you can create anything if you know the materials in making it. Wow, that sounds so awesome, Izuku complimented Momo, who looked a little red at his praising. Tenya was about to tell Izuku to keep his volume down when the newcomer approached. Hey, you that kid whose dad is the villain, right? Why the hell are you here? The mean kid asked the stunned Izuku. Izuku started, utterly panicking on the inside. And aren't you the one who caused all that damage that lasted a few days to fix? Hey, that's our friend you are talking about. Tenya stood up and reprimanded the stranger. And it wasn't his fault he caused that damage. It was the first time his quirk ignited and he didn't know how to control it. Momo responded while Izuku watched on. And so what? I don't care that his father was a bad person. That doesn't make him bad. Tenya retorted, giving Izuku a kind smile. Momo added with a slight glare to her eyes. Yeah. He has been nothing but a kind sweetheart to us since we met him. Before the mean kid could say anything else, Izuku's homeroom teacher, Asani, approached him and led him away to the principal's office. When he tried to protest, she said, there will be none of that in this school. No discrimination or bullying will take place under my watch. Izuku apologized that they had to deal with that person because of him, but they both shook their heads. We are friends now, correct? And friends stuck up for each other. Tenya said softly while Momo gave a big grin. Tenya cleaned up his glasses with his handkerchief after he finished what he was saying. Momo added, yeah, and don't mind what he said to you at all. But my dad is a villain and I did cause all that damage. Izuku started to doubt. But that wasn't your fault at all. Tenya argued back, placing his glasses on again. It wasn't? He asked quietly, mostly to himself. No, you couldn't have stopped it from happening. Momo said gently at her new friend. Okay. Thanks for cheering me up, Ten-chan and Momo-chan. Izuku answered back at them, causing them both to blush at their new nicknames. Mom, Izuku yelled out, running to his mother in her casual wear. Izuku, how was your day? Nomuri asked, straight from her last patter. It was great, I made 2 new friends, Izuku responded with a big smile that held all his excitement to talk about his first day. Smiling, Nomuri replied, that's great, I'm so happy that you made some friends. Nomuri. A voice called out from behind her. Tensei? Nomuri asked, seeing her friend's face. Izuku recognized a familiar figure standing behind the new stranger, Ten-chan. Izuku? Tenya questioned at seeing a face he just met that day. Wow, you guys have already met, huh? Well, I'm glad since I was going to introduce you to my little brother soon anyway. And look at that, you're already friends, Tensei said, scratching at the back of his neck before turning to Nomuri. Nomuri smiled at her friend before hearing a girl's voice from behind her. The 2 friends looked at each other before turning around to see Momo approach with her nanny behind her. Nomuri smiled at him. I'm glad he found some new friends, she thought as she watched her son talk to his peers. Hitachi enters stage left as Izuku's cousin. Nomuri smiled when she saw that Izuku's eyes were closed, it seems like the bedtime story worked. Izuku was lying down comfortably in his soft bed with his face serene, having dreams of joining his mother in her work as her sidekick. She lightly kissed his forehead goodnight before exiting his room. Katana heading to her room, but before she could make it to her comfy bed, her phone vibrated. She raised an eyebrow as she took the shaking phone into her hands to answer whoever was calling. What does Hisashi need at this time of night? She thought to herself as she swiped to answer the call. Hey, Hisashi, what's up? Nomuri asked in greeting. Hi. I have some news, Hisashi started, sounding off especially with his voice sounding like there is an echo. What is it? Nomuri asked, sitting down on her bed. Hisashi sighed before telling her the news. Eraserhead and I are adopting a little boy, he is in the hospital right now with us getting checked out. Wait, what? When did you guys decide to adopt a kid? What happened? She asked, her eyes widened at the sudden announcement. Well, when I was working on my radio show, Azawa checked out an orphanage that he got a tip on while he worked his late night patrol. Apparently there was an orphanage near Hosu where some caretakers aren't really doing their jobs and are actually dealing with the bad side of things in the underground network. So he went in with backup on the way, just to apprehend the horrible caretakers, right? Nomuri asked, making sure Azawa didn't do something reckless. He did. The backup was in the way to his location as soon as he entered the building. But he got to a certain room hidden under all the pretend. There was Hisashi paused, taking in a shaky breath. What is it? What was wrong? She implored, trying to avoid her friend bursting into tears. There was an attic room where they kept a poor kid in a muzzle. His quirk has something to do with him talking, but they branded him as a villain kid and forced him into it. They never allowed him to take it off unless he was sleeping, eating, or bathing. They never allowed him to live his life happily without it, Hisashi sniffled, trying to compose himself. Oh no. Nomuri raised a hand up to her mouth. He rescued the kid and apparently the little listener knew who he was. I think it was adorable when Izawa told me, he blushed and everything. Hisashi chuckled, remembering Shouda's reddened face when he told him about that little scene. She furrowed her brows. Well, what happened to the other children there? After the police took the caretakers away, the rest of the orphan kids were transferred over to a safer location. Azawa helped the kid get the muzzle off before escorting him to the hospital personally because he saw a lot of bruises and cuts, and Hisashi started sniffling. Whoa, hey. It's okay now, right? He is safe now, he is out of there. Yeah, Hisashi sniffled, he didn't deserve that kind of treatment, he is so nice. He acted shy around me, but when he opened up he told me all about how he loved the cookie he had for dessert, and I know what you mean, Nomuri said, looking back at the room where Izuku was sleeping soundly. So you guys are adopting him? Yes. He deserves a better life, more than that place could have ever given him. He does, and what better way that to live with you 2 lovebirds. I'm sure he will be very happy in his new family. She reassured her friend as they continued their conversation. Before Hisashi could respond, the phone was shuffled a bit when a deeper voice came on. You did this. You caused me to have more of a soft spot for kids. That is not my fault, you always had a soft spot for kids, Izuku just made it more obvious, Shouda. Azawa sighed, the paperwork will be done soon, so we can take him into our custody before we are granted full rights to him. Maybe when everything is settled, he can meet his new cousin. Yeah, I'm sure Izuku will be so happy to meet his cousin. But take your time, I don't want to force the little guy into anything. Namuri added with a smile, not noticing her door creak open a bit. Okay, I'll update you soon on how it comes along, have a nice night Namuri. Aizawa retorted when a loud-sounding good night came from Hisashi over the speaker. You too, Namuri added before hanging up her phone. She has tying her hair up in a ponytail when her door creaked open to reveal a curly bush of green hair. I have a cousin. She questioned her son as soon as she saw his awake and adorable face. Izuku, what are you doing up so late? Mama said that I have a cousin. Do I? Izuku asked, approaching her bedside. She sighed and picked him up to sit next to her. She directed the next words at him, yes, but it might take a while for you to meet them, they have to get over some obstacles in their life right now. Okay, but when they finally come over, I'll make sure we are best buds, Izuku promised with a determined look on his face. Yeah, you go and do that. After you go back to bed. Namuri urged her son. Can I sleep here? Izuku pleaded shyly, twisting the bottom of his shirt in his hands. She rolled her eyes fondly at her son, okay, my little prince. Izuku cheered as he snuggled up to the many comfortable throw pillows she had stacked on her bed. After a month, Hitachi was finally comfortable enough to see who his cousin was. Namuri got constant updates from Hisashi that consisted of what his favorite color was and what he liked to eat. The updates with his adoption, healing and rehabilitation process was relayed to her shortly by Aizawa when he had the time to detail her in. Everything was apparently going great with taking care of Hitachi. Hitachi was at first shy with them and was surprised he had a room all to himself that was nothing like the dark and scary one he lived in before. It took a long time for him to be fully comfortable to be able to hold a conversation with them, but now he talks to them each day. And thank goodness everything worked out. Hitachi was coming to her apartment to meet his cousin with Hisashi and Aizawa in tow. So Yamada Aizawa Hitachi was coming here to meet his cousin who he has never met before. A knock at the door proved that maybe she should have been paying more attention to time than she was. She silently cursed before heading to the door to allow her guests in. Aizawa stood there hand in hand with Hisashi. Both of their hair was down. Hisashi long straight blonde hair cascading down his back while Aizawa's wavy black hair came down right under his shoulders. Hitachi stood there in the middle of both of them with his purple hair poofed up. Hi there, Nem. Hitachi, this is our friend Namuri. Namuri, this is our son and your nephew, Hitachi, Hisashi introduced. Hi. Nice to finally meet you. I've been friends with your dads for a long time. Namuri greeted with a kind smile. Hitachi nodded, looking up at her with a hint of hesitancy in his eyes. Namuri thought of an idea to make him more open to her. She smirked, don't worry. I'll tell you all their secret stories with them making fools of themselves. There was this one time. Okay, that's enough. Aizawa stopped her from continuing, but she had already gained what she had been looking for. A small smile from the child that held in a fit of laughter, his eyes more welcoming to her presence. I'll tell you later, she whispered to him as the three entered her home. Hitachi nodded with an excited look on his face. Hitachi entered the living room, but shrunk back at the sight of Izuku watching hero fights in television. Izuku looked up to see his cousin standing there, he brightened up with a smile that confused the heck out of Hitachi. Hi, I'm Izuku. I'm your cousin. Izuku greeted his cousin who stepped back as the excited child approached him. Hello. I'm Hitachi. Hitachi shyly answered as his cousin looked very happy at his presence. He was very surprised that he was acting this way, he never expected that anyone would actually be this happy to see him. Yeah, I'm so glad I get to meet you. I've never had a cousin before, so I want to make sure I'm the bestest cousin ever. Do you want to play heroes? We can be the heroes who defeat the bad guy. Izuku replied, his eyes twinkling with enthusiasm. You aren't going to make me be the villain? Hitachi questioned with surprise very evident in his voice. No, we can be the heroes, I'll be Midnight and you can be Eraserhead, and we can defeat the villain named Hammerhead. Izuku responded with a smile as he picked up the action figures. Oh, okay, Hitachi said hesitantly, taking his favorite hero action figure in his hands to play with his new cousin. He had hoped that Izuku is actually different from the rest and will treat him like he always wished someone would. Since he got away from that dark place, his parents showed him that people can actually be nice. Izuku swiped down with his midnight doll at the upright villain doll that stood upright on the living room table while Hitachi messed with the yellow glasses of his figure. The three friends watched as the two got along. They seemed to be doing just fine. Aizawa commented before taking a sip of his coffee that Midnight brewed just for him. Hisashi breathed out his relief, thank goodness, I knew Izuku would break through Hitachi's shy barrier. Namuri giggled as she watched Hitachi take down the villain with Izuku supporting cheers, I can't wait until they both starts begging to see their cousin again. Oof, I'm already planning the play dates. Hisashi said, aiming a smug grin towards Shouta. Ugh, Aizawa sighed into his coffee cup, earning cheerful laughs from his friend Namuri and his partner, Hisashi. The two cousins looked over to see the three adults laughing amongst themselves in the kitchen. They shrugged and laughed together. "I'm so happy that I got to meet you," Shai-chan Izuku said as they held onto their action figures. "Yeah, me too," Hitachi agreed, looking into the very enthusiastic eyes of his green-haired cousin. "I want to do this again." Izuku's birthday party. Namuri was glad that Izuku was feeling happier. His therapist said that Izuku no longer has any horrible nightmare about that night. Tenya and Momo are wonderful friends. Hitachi is becoming even more comfortable around him and around other people as well. Bakugo gets to meet up with him when both mothers are free. Everything was going amazing. And now, it is time for Izuku's 5th birthday. Hard to believe, but her little prince was growing up. And with that, he is going to have the best birthday party. Okay. Cake. Check. Balloon. Check. Invites to everyone. Check. Presents. Check. Namuri muttered to herself, pointing out each thing she had concealed in her room. The guests should be arriving very soon, and Izuku is so excited. She laughed, remembering when he woke up this morning that he couldn't decide what to wear to welcome everybody. She helped him pick out a white shirt and purple shorts. He decided to wear his trusty red pair of shoes with the outfit, since then I can look more like mama. She smiled when she realized that. Yes, the white shirts could definitely be the fabric that rips away easily. Then his purple shorts can definitely be her hair and a little bit of the black in her outfit, since it was a very dark shade of purple. Then the red could be the accents her hero costume has. It was lovely to think that he wants to be like her. She ruffled his hair, eliciting giggles from the small boy. She was surprised when he carefully floated himself up fast to her face. He dived in for a hug that she was glad to give. He smiled into her neck. "I'm glad you are finally getting used to your quirk." "It took a while," Hyle Midnight commented, squeezing him tight against her. It took a really long time to have Izuku more comfortable trying to train his quirk. He was so frightened that something like the park incident would happen again. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he cried out when she asked why he didn't use his quirk that often. With some help and encouragement from her and his uncles, Izuku gained enough trust in himself to start learning how to work his powerful quirk. Well, he just liked to float up to things and float things towards himself right now. And that was fine. It made her day to see him try to sneak more cookies out of the jar when they were in really high places. Speaking of, she should try hiding the jar more secretively. But the knocking at the door disrupted her thoughts of hiding the jar in her own bedroom. She smiled before she turned to Izuku, who was still resting his head on her shoulder. "Let's go greet the guests, shall we?" "Yay," Izuku replied happily as she walked him to the front door. She casually strolled up with a happy toddler on her shoulder as she opened the door to reveal the Bakugo family. "Oh hello, nice to see you three so early." Itsuki smirked happily, strolling into the apartment very excited. "Yeah, nice to see you too. It took us forever to find out where to go, but we found it." "Hello. Thanks for inviting us." Masaru greeted, bending into small bow. Izuku Kitsuki called out to his friend who was out of hug attack range. Hakan Izuku yelled out happily, floating down to land into his friend's arms. "Yeah, you're here." "Of course I'm the bestest friend," Kaken gloated, tightening his hold on his friend. "I got you the best gift." "I just like that you're here, thanks for coming, Kaken." Izuku replied, smiling brightly. "HMPH. It's no problem." Kitsuki proudly explained, glad that he made Izuku happy. Another knock at the door proved to be Izuku's uncles with his two cousins. "Ten-chan, Shai-chan," Izuku yelled out. Izuku Tenya rushed forward straight into a hug with his friend. "Aizu." Hitachi called out shyly, walking forward after the fast blue-haired toddler. His purple hair a mess of waves. He waited patiently until he received his own hug. "What, no hug for the uncles?" Hisashi teasingly complained, holding out his arms for Izuku. "Uncles, ah well, Uncle Mick, Uncle Ten," Izuku shouted before focusing his quirk to float fast into their arms for big uncle hug. "Yay, almost everybody is here." "Yes, Momo should be here soon, the traffic is running a little long. Her nanny texted me ahead of time they might be a little longer." Namuri explained, messing with her long hair to put it into a messy bun. "Well, let's begin the party," Namuri said, making all the small children cheer in joy. First up on the party list was a game of chutes and ladders. And after Hitachi had won, the next was Candyland. Izuku was just a fan of looking at the background of the make-believe land made of candy. "I wish it were real," Izuku mumbled, especially looking at the cotton candy. "Me too." Kitsuki muttered angrily, mad that it doesn't exist. Tenya and Hitachi nodded in agreement. Namuri silently watched with her friend and Bakugo's parents until she heard a knock at the door. She excused herself from the adult guests to answer it. The door opened to Momo dressed in a really flowery sundress with her nanny carrying two big boxes labeled for Izuku. "Hello," Momo greeted excitedly with a smile. Her Annie bowed slightly, letting Namuri take the presents from her arms to place them with the rest of the presents in his room. "Hello, Miss Yaoi Rozu," Namuri greeted, holding the presents in her arms. "It's okay. You can call me Momo," Momo exclaimed, walking into the apartment. Okay, Momo. Izuku is in the living room playing some games with his friends. Go ahead and join in for the next round of Connect 4. Namuri said, allowing the nanny to walk in and gestured a seat in the living room where the other adults were sitting. The small friends played more games until Namuri announced it was time for cake. Izuku and his friends gathered around the kitchen table to see a large container of vanilla ice cream next to a chocolate and vanilla two-tier cake. It was a small two-tier cake with green and white icing and decorated with small depiction of heroes. Izuku was so ecstatic he just started swaying in a happy dance. Momo giggles at the happy dance, following behind the others. Bakugo went for the chocolate cake with Hitachi, while Izuku went for the vanilla cake with Tenyu and Momo. Safe to say, they were fully stuffed with the cake and the additional ice cream scoop given. Okay, present time, Namuri announced, her friends watching her with a smile. Mitsuki went to help her with bringing the gifts out into the living room for Izuku to unwrap. Izuku clapped as Mitsuki placed the first small present down in front of him. Those one is from Uncle Masaru. Izuku smiled as he ripped open the package to show a handmade patchwork cape and mask to play heroes with. The cape has so many small scraps of fabric all sewn together in an elegant cape made for a hero. The mask matched the cape with its perfectly sewn stitches. I hope you like it, Masaru responded with a gentle smile. In return, Izuku went to hug him by floating as fast he could into his warm arms. Izuku gladly put on the patchwork cape of many patterns, but saved the mask until later. With the gift to start, he eagerly opened the other gifts to have similar reactions of hugging to each person respectfully. Mitsuki gave him several small action figures of some of his favorite heroes. She was so ready to give him his tight hug when he floated over to her. Mitsuki proudly walked up with his own gift with a red blush across his cheeks in anticipation. He thrusted the gift out to Izuku, which was gently taken from his hands to be ripped open in a similar fashion. Izuku almost started crying happy tears when he saw that not only All Might but also Midnight Onises were inside. Tenyu gifted him several books that he loved to read and hoped that Izuku would love as much as him. Izuku was very excited about a picture book on the recent top 10 heroes. Tenyu was giggling when Izuku gave up on the floating to rush his cousin into a surprisingly soft bear hug. Tensei got him a giant coloring book with one of those large boxes of crayons with a sharpener at the back. Izuku had never been so excited to color in his life. Tensei laughed as he got a big hug from a smiling Izuku. Shota gifted him a similar scarf to his own that was long and dragged on the ground. When Namuri questioned, he pointed out that Izuku's quirk would benefit greatly from the support item. Plus, it is soft, so I think he will like it, Shota said, gesturing to a sparkly-eyed Izuku who put it on immediately over the patchwork cape. Azashi got him 4 hoodies for each of his favorite family members who were heroes. Present Mick, Midnight, and Ingenium hoodies were pulled out to show off their beautiful color scheme and pattern. An Eraserhead hoodie was a custom order that was a surprise on the bottom. Izuku made sure to hug him tightly enough for his Ashi to slightly choke on air, which made Shota laugh. Hitachi shyly handed over his small gift for Izuku to open. He had gotten him a very soft blanket with a hood that had many cats patterned on it. Hitachi giggles when Izuku put it on over his cape and scarf and hugged him. It was a very warm hug between cousins. Momo was very excited to show him the mountain of tea she had gotten for him. It all came with a tea set with his mother, Midnight depicted on the teapot, and he was on the teacup. Namuri loved the gift since her and her son's little drawings were very cute since they were chibi. Izuku was very glad to hug her in a very tight friend embrace that caused her to laugh. Namuri gave her his last present, which was from her. It was weird since it had holes on the top, but he didn't judge it. He smiled as he took off the top only to receive a large ball of fur jumping up to his face. The puppy Izuku yelled out, picking up the tiny dog into his arms, laughing as the small dog licked the freckles on his face. The rest of the kids awed in shock as they saw an adorable puppy with a red collar around their fluffy light brown fur. It's a golden doodle. Namuri remarked to her surprised guests. She was so sweet. I couldn't help it. Plus, she can watch over him. The guests watched as Izuku was full of smiles as the little puppy danced around him on the floor. Namuri smiled, watching her son smile. She asked, what's her name? Izuku paused, keeping a grin on his face as he looked at his new fluffy friend, Miku. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.